So, Chris, before we start the show, we're going to do a little plug like we have been for Simtheory. If you want to support the show and also get access to all the models and some very unique MCPs, you can do that by signing up to simtheory.ai using the coupon still relevant to getting $10 off any subscription. I also wanted to call out a few new MCPs. I am leaking some accidentally on the screen right now, so I'm going to slowly scroll down. But we have released recently Sea Dream 4, which is like Nano Banana if you're getting confused with image models. It's really good and worth checking out. It creates stunning images and it can do very precise edits. I also built, based on a request in the community, the Audiobook Maker MCP. So now you can turn a story you might have or a story you create into an audiobook. So you can start to judge the model's storytelling capability. There's also now Zapier in there, which enables you to connect to, I think, 8,000 plus applications right across your business or just things in your personal life as well, which is a really cool MCP to check out. All right, end plug, on with the show. So, Chris, this week we finally got answers to the question of, do model providers intentionally degrade the model or route to cheaper versions of the model to save money after a launch, which has long been speculated. In fact, there was a tweet from Anthropic, which is now calling themselves Claude. I think they did some sort of rebrand in the week. We'd also like to address a concern we've heard in the community. We never intentionally degrade model quality as a result of demand or other factors. Now, everyone speculated that was untrue, but they did release this week a post-mortem of the 3 recent issues that they had found with the Claude models. So they at least admitted the models had become stupider.
It's an interesting one because I've long thought about whether they're behind the scenes switching things out, and even their post-mortem sort of admits that there is routing going on. So there is some sort of evaluation of the queries you're sending it, at least on Claude.ai when you send it through, and it's deciding which model to give it to, even though people assume, like in the selector, they've got, say, Claude Opus selected, but they're obviously dropping it down to either quantized versions or lower versions of models when they deem that's appropriate. And to me, even their admission is sort of like saying, well, oh, whoops, we accidentally tuned it a bit to go to the lower ones when you thought it was the higher ones. So I think even if they are telling the truth, it's still a little bit sneaky what's going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the bugs was the routing error. Some users' requests were accidentally sent to the wrong type of server, specifically servers set up for the massive 1 million token context window. So this is their new 1 million context window. But they said a routine load balancing change in late August made this problem much worse, affecting up to 16% of certain requests at its peak.
So it's, to me, the big implication here is there's actually introspection, like some sort of evaluation going on what you're sending through, rather than it just being some round robin routing that just happened to accidentally send it to the 1 million context. They're clearly looking at factors like the number of tokens, the content of your messages to decide which model to send it to, at least on the Claude side. I doubt this applies to the API, but you don't really know if you're working directly with Anthropic.
There was also this paper. It's called The Illusion of Diminishing Returns, Measuring Long Horizon Execution in LLMs. It says, does continued scaling of large language models yield diminishing returns? Real-world value often stems from the length of task an agent can complete. We start this work by observing the simple but counterintuitive fact that marginal gains in single-step accuracy can compound into exponential improvements in the length of tasks a model can successfully complete. And so essentially they say the real bottleneck in LLMs right now is actually execution, not reasoning. And they argue that basically if an LLM fails at a task, so this is a long-running task, like you could think about it as an agentic task, it's not because it can't figure out what to do, which we've always observed. Like the plan generally is right, but it's because it's making mistakes during the execution. And the paper found that once it makes one error, it basically sees that in the message history, this like all these errors, and then it sort of assumes like, oh, they want more errors in the output. So it progressively gets worse. But then if reprompted correctly, the model actually is smart enough to know what to do and do the task, which is a really interesting observation.
I think it's not just interesting. I think it really matches up with the way, at least I know you and I work with the AI right now. Like, as in because my initial reaction to this was to balk at it and be like, you're totally wrong, because I find that the longer and longer a chat session gets, the better it gets in terms of answering questions. But what I missed is the point that I'm in the middle there, nudging it along and saying, you're wrong about that. This is different, giving it additional context and gradually improving things to the point where it's giving right answers. What they're talking about is leaving it to its own devices to go through that process and compounding on the fact it makes a mistake. And during the week, we saw that AI village thing that everybody likes, where they're getting AIs to go off on a long period of time with goals to try and solve things. And you absolutely see the errors compounding there. It sort of goes down a path that's wrong right from the start, but just keeps optimizing that path, even though there's a fundamental error that a supervisory agent or human is going to realize, hey, no, that's totally wrong. The amount of times I've been working with an AI assistant and said, hey, this approach is wrong. What if we take a totally different approach? And then using the exact same context, it's able to get itself out of that mess and go on to solve the problem. So I definitely completely understand what they're saying here. As we move towards having autonomous assistants where we want them to be more goal-based and give them the starting point and then hope that they get all the way there, they're not going to have me or someone in the middle nudging them along and saying, you're wrong about that, you need to fix that. And so this really probably is the next major area we need advancement in order to get those autonomous agents working in a way that everyone expects them to.
Yeah, I think that to me, the only missing piece is really getting the supervisor agent to say to the runner agent, hey, buddy, like, you've gone down the wrong path. The challenge there becomes from testing this is they're very agreeable. So, like, you ask it, hey, like, look at what's wrong with this. And it's not necessarily, like, definitive in saying, like, what a human would say, where with experience or just with some common sense and logic, you're like, no, that's wrong. But interestingly enough, if in the paper, they can get a lot further than you would think. Let me bring up the fact here. So GPT-5 can execute over 1,000 steps correctly. So that's a pretty long running task. The next best competitor is Claude for Sonnet at 432 steps, according to the paper. So it doesn't look like they tested Opus. They probably couldn't get enough bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly.
But GPT-5, in terms of thinking and its ability to execute long tasks, is just so far ahead. And you can kind of tell that working with it, I think, generally, that sometimes I think that's where the intelligence comes from. It can go down the right path. And as you said, we often talk about, you can have a chat where you start to go down the wrong path and you've got to go back now and like fork off where it sort of all went wrong and then push it down another path. And I think
it's probably one of my biggest fears when I work with the assistant over a long session is I don't want to accidentally mislead it or give it information that may confuse it and muddy things up for the future. Obviously, being able to fork chats avoids that, but nevertheless, you still want to make sure that you're keeping it on the task and not distracting it from what's important.
To me, this can be solved pretty easily if we can get the technology to a point where instead of the human supervisor at the highest level, at least the supervising agent can think somewhat like we would think now.
Yes, and I think this is why the emphasis around models isn't necessarily the right thing. I see that the LLMs will become a increasingly diminished part of an AI system. Not that their role isn't important, but it's just that it's more around the logic and the architecture of how the different elements in the AI system work. Like you talk about a supervisory agent. The question is, does it intervene after every step, or does it initiate multiple threads of execution and evaluate which is the best outcome of that? Does it have like a sort of, we talked about this in the past, like, is there some sort of voting system where you have multiple opinions from different expert agents within a system to vote? Is this the right way to go or not? Or is it like the what's that 7 hats thing where you've got, the devil's advocate, the skeptic, the different roles where each of those supervisors is saying, hang on a sec, you've completely screwed this up. You need to do it this way instead. And then another agent's like, no, it's correct because I checked this and I did this research and that's right. And I think that increasingly we're going to see systems like that where you have these balancing and counterbalancing elements in there to guide the main thread down the right road. And one of my problems with models like GPT-5 and why I don't use it too often is because it's high latency. But if it's getting that higher accuracy and you can therefore get to a higher level of autonomy in an AI system, then it doesn't matter so much because you can sort of set it off on its path and it'll tell you when it's ready. So it's probably better in those scenarios to have it take a more careful approach, have more steps in the process, and get way further down the path than you would have you having to be in the loop at every step.
I also just question the, like, I guess there's probably two schools of thought right now, and I don't think, there's probably not a right or wrong answer, but there's the idea that a model like GPT-5 can just eventually, like maybe GPT-6 can do 2,000 tasks and GPT-7 can do 5,000 tasks. And I guess I would question, like you say, does it really matter? Because is the technology going to get to a point where you can't run concurrent threads? Like, to me, running one thread, if it goes down the wrong path or takes the wrong turn, you're in a lot of trouble. Like, getting out, like undoing that is going to be really tough. Whereas if you have like 3 threads with slightly different approaches, then I guess the next challenge is how do you pick the best outcome when you don't necessarily know the answer? And to put that in a practical sense, imagine you're answering a support ticket and the tools are it has access to the database of users and payments through Stripe and like pretty much all the things that a regular support agent would have access to, maybe even a computer to go and test a bug or like see if the bug is a problem. And so you send it off on that path, at least one model, it comes to an answer for the customer, like a draft answer, and then you look at it to do that approval step. You're like, this is just completely and utterly stupid and wrong. Like at some point it's taken the wrong turn. But then if you had 3 versions that are slightly different and maybe one's the right answer, like how do you then verify like which is the best answer given that it then goes off in the wrong direction? So I wonder if scaling the model's internal clock or the task length that it can achieve versus just using small chunks, like completing things in small chunks and having those chunks with success fail criteria would be better. Like it's hard to know without trying.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I must admit, I don't understand it on the fully technical level that's going on inside the models, but my preference has always been do it in smaller steps and let's evaluate and guide you along the way rather than thinking that some holy grail model is just going to be able to go off and fully solve an issue. I've found the longer they execute, the more detailed the answer perhaps, but it doesn't always lead to the best real world results in terms of the final output, even if just for the fact it takes so much longer so that it's way slower to iterate. You showed me something during the week that I thought was really interesting, this idea of when a model does something that's not quite right, actually saying to it, which part of your prompt caused you to get this wrong? Or why did you decide to do that instead of this? Or how could I actually adjust your prompt to make sure that we do it this way always in the future? And I think that sort of, cooperative process of the AI being almost like a malleable system that you can work on and work with it to get it to a point that you want. And then sort of freeze that state and say, okay, from now on, this is your starting point for operation. I think that kind of thing is probably going to be a lot more effective than just having a better model, because the paradigm's always going to be there where the model is just part of the system. The model will never become the whole system. And so therefore its role in the system needs to be proportionate to how you optimize the whole thing.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think about the practicalities. Like if you said to me today, like, I want a research agent that can call and survey people, collate that data, and then present a report to me on, any topic. Or I want you to build me a support agent that can handle like 80 to 90% of support tickets, right? And these are things I have direct experience doing right now. And so, like, that introduces a lot of challenges where if you think about like trying to actually replace like a worker, say, you've got to think through, well, okay, what's the job description? What are the tasks that you do in that job? So I'm going to use support tickets just because it's something I think everyone understands. So it's like, you've got all this reference material, you've got knowledge in your brain of just like, pattern recognition, right? And so you've got to simulate all that stuff with the model. I think just running the model and saying like, go do this, it's never going to work. So it's like, prepare the context, prepare the memories, all those typical sort of agentic use cases. But what I'm landing on lately is like, okay, do it manually first. So connect a bunch of MCPs, right? To connect into the help software, the documents, like whatever information you need. Actually connect it in and then go through the process of like, hey, agent, can like, what do you like draft a response to this particular ticket and then give it some feedback and then give it like 4 examples of where it nailed it and then wrap that in some sort of other MCP or wrapper, which is like you've trained it on that task. And so then you give the agent, you're like, here is your job description. Here is how the tools you have to execute these very defined tasks with obviously security and permissions or whatever you need. And then it's just a case of like, it's limited scope as to what it can do. So it's very unlikely then to drift and go down a path where it errors out a lot. And so it's like almost these sub skills or sub tasks within the agent right now with today's current technology. If you want to get it to work, I think that's kind of how you have to do it.
I agree, because if you think about what the alternative is, right? The idea is, okay, I have my same MCPs connected. So I've got my ticketing system. I've maybe got my internal MCP that has access to data about customers and things that are needed to answer the questions, and a knowledge base, right? Let's say you've just got those 3, but between them, they've got like 30 tools that it can use. And then you throw it at this incredible 1,000 task thinking model and says, here's your tools, here's the goal, here's the ticket. How does it know which combination of tools to use in order to solve that? Like, you might have certain checks that need to happen every time, like check they're on a paid plan, check if they're on the paid plan that it's valid or whatever, check that this flag isn't set in the account. Only things you as the sort of business operator know that matter. With all the tools in the world, the system is not going to pick the exact combination that get the job done in order to solve that problem. And even if it does, there's no guarantee that will happen every time. And so the thing becomes, yes, the model is perfectly capable of doing this task from end to finish with the right prompt, but it's not always going to have that. And things in the ticket itself might cloud the prompt, and then you get different results. So an AI system like you're describing is far more valuable, where you've trained it, okay, in these scenarios, here's what we do. And these are the steps we take. And you've seen that, and this was successful and this wasn't. And then you give it 4 or 5 examples of that. And then from there, it gets to know your system and infers the combination of tools that need to be called. Or in some cases, you might want to be even explicit. This part of it's compulsory. This part, you use your own discretion as to whether to do that or not. And I would argue, no matter how good the models get, you're always going to need a system like that to accomplish these real world multifaceted tasks. It's just not going to be a model that's smart enough to just figure out absolutely everything.
Yeah, it's sort of like putting GPT-5 in a Tesla and saying like self-drive plus. Like, it's just not going to be able to do it. And so, you obviously have specialist models in a car to do that. And you could imagine one day even just having special agentic based models for particular job roles, even like the model is just a total tune for that role, which I think people would pay a lot of money for, to be quite honest. But I can also I think though, having said all that, if you look at GPT-5 being able to execute for longer and figure out where it went wrong better than the other models and try other methodologies before it basically self-destructs and quits out. I think really what the paper's saying is like Claude 4 Sonnet's pretty good, right? But it does die pretty quickly if it takes a wrong turn, or it gives up a lot quicker, right? Whereas GPT-5 goes on and on. I do find it suffers from the problems I saw in O1 and O3 though, where it can just go so deep down a path, burn so many tokens, call so many tools, and go so far south in terms of the wrong direction that because it runs longer, you can't necessarily get feedback from another model and say, hey, no, stop, buddy, because it's still on that sort of run or that its own clock. So I am interested to experiment more, around more with this, but I do think right now for agentic tasks at the moment, in terms of intelligence and just the ability to make great decisions with MCPs, GPT-5 is really the standout. Like if I was going to build it today, that's what I would be using.
Yeah, and I think that we get to that autonomy in stages. And I think that's the idea that you've been talking about all week, is that we need to gradually equip these AI systems to be able to get further down the road on a task for us. So one example you gave during the week was having a dry run kind of concept when you ask an agent to do something. So you go, here's all the tools you need to do. Here's the procedure. Here's an example of it successful. Now go do some of them. But before you finish, give me a summary of what you're going to do. And then you, as the human supervisor, say, okay, that's great, proceed, or you give it some feedback. And I think that the idea of getting to autonomy the way they're, say, doing in that AI village, it's a fun thought experiment right now, but we can see clearly that the technology isn't there. The way to get there is to gradually equip the models with the AI systems with the tools to get there, perhaps like in-context memory, approvals processes, some sort of basic procedures in terms of order of doing things or checklists or something like that. Get the combination of those things that get us closer and closer to automation. And then one day before we know it, we're trusting more and more of them to just do it on their own.
Yeah, and I think this is why, I mean, it's not a secret really. In Simtheory, our approach has been don't go to full blown especially to allow people to build their own agents, right? It's not like we can go build a product like Claude Code. You could do that. I'm not sure why we would when great products like that exist, but those kind of products with the agentic loops, I think the problem, at least in my head, I'm trying to solve for myself first is how do I have a way I can train my own agents that are very successful and very productive at tasks? And so how I think through that first is, well, I need context and I need to be able to interact with those systems. I need it to be able to reliably do stuff. And to me, MCPs mostly solve that. So it's give it access to a computer is sort of a last-ditched effort. Give it connections into, say, a Salesforce or a Zendesk or Zapier or whatever it needs, whatever context you need, and then whatever actions you need to take. So it's okay, now you can get context, now you can take action. You have an underlying framework where the model itself can go and execute these. Then you need sort of a safety framework around that. You don't necessarily want it to take certain actions all the time, but in some other agents you might want it to. So I think the next part becomes, okay, well, they're not very good at just running wild. So how do you train it to do tasks and skills? So can you allow the user to build and train the an assistant to do skills? Okay, now it's successfully calling skills. Imagine skills as a unit, a series of contexts it can gather and actions it can take. Solve a support ticket is a skill, and it's a combination of things and MCPs. And then, that to me then becomes, okay, cool, it can do it. It can reliably do these skills 80% of the time. Okay, now how do we make it agentic? How do you then set, it's Free Willy. How do you set this thing free into the wild and see how it performs, and then measure that performance? And then just like we saw in AI Village, which we'll get to in a minute, it's really then calling back to the human and saying, hey, I'm stuck here, I need some help. And then how can you reduce those interventions with the agents? But I think what excites me,
it's a bit like your Tesla, isn't it? The number of human interruptions required, or whatever it is.
But what excites me most about this is then I can imagine a world where listeners of the show and people in general can go and say, I have this very defined process in my business which is causing busy work. And for us, it's with Simtheory, we obviously are still doing all of the support tickets ourselves mostly. But for us, it's like, can we build an agent to take care of like 80 to 90%? So we're only dealing with like things where it's like, we really
And
need
take
to
care
look
of
at
them
this.
completely, right? Like actually diagnosing and solving problems, not just quoting shit from the knowledge base.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
should add that it's like actually taking action, like
yeah.
fixing something, fixing account problems, like doing real work. That's just really busy work for us. And that, to me, that's so meaningful. And I'm sure there's so many people out there that listen going, okay, well, there's all of these processes and tasks. And to me, this is like the holy grail, right? That we're all chasing. And so I think like being able to have your assistant that you're working with day to day, but then having your sort of agentic runners in the background doing like actual busy work, and maybe look, maybe it's only like 50% of those tasks it's successful at, but that's 50% of stuff you're not doing
But a
anymore.
good example, again, just sticking on the support ticket one, is just gathering all the relevant information, like looking at recent error logs, looking at account status and information, looking at some sort of history of what's going on to say, hey, I've found these three fairly obvious things, or this one fairly obvious thing that this probably is. Like that alone could save you 10 minutes investigation, and you're doing that per ticket. Like, and I think there's so many business processes like that where it's really the getting all the different pieces together. Like I've got to log into 5 different systems to situate myself and work out what's going in the problem. Whereas the AI, with its access to all the different tools and systems and context and a history of successfully solving tasks of this kind, is able to get you so much further down, where you're just like that Homer Simpson pressing the enter key, just yes, I would like to solve this, yes, I would like to solve this. It's just simply because the AI is just it's effortless for it to do those things for you once you show it.
But I think there's another big like there's a large amount of work that really needs to be done for this all to come together. And that's around, especially in the enterprise or business context, the whole idea of like the true custom internal MCP, where you're accessing like internal databases or running commands, at least for us, like running commands that maybe like we would do it through like SSHing into a server where it's like a pretty important command that we're doing. And it's like, how can you build MCPs in such a way with permissions that agents can use, where they can access sensitive internal data or actually take meaningful actions in the business, or access data that's simply just not available. Like, it's not like everyone's got all their data in like Salesforce or a Snowflake database. Like, the world's not that simple and easy. So I think I just see this huge boom, like this enormous boom for people to be out there in the enterprise going and building internal MCPs that, just like I built like the video maker or the audio book MCP, but like these sort of like productized MCPs within an organization that can do very specific things from start to finish for that organization that can be called. And then you can sort of bring those up to the agentic level. And then all of a sudden, this is a meaningful agent to that business.
And I think the models are just so unbelievably good at classification and data structures and things along those lines that once you expose it to your internal data for your company, like actual, raw log files or raw database records and those kind of things that to us look like it's just overwhelming because there's just too much data and you can't really make sense of it. AI is just so good at that stuff. Like, it can take all of that and synthesize it, and you just
Oops.
like make me a beautiful visualization that explains what the hell's going on here. And it can draw the connections, and it can come up with ideas of how to represent it that solve your problems. And I've seen that a lot of times. And this is why I think the real rise in the next little while is exactly what you just said. Every company needs to have an internal MCP that exposes data. And yes, there needs to be security. And yes, there needs to be permissions, like as in don't allow the AI, for example, to access things that you wouldn't want your staff to see. Or if you do, make sure they've got the appropriate role to be able to do that. But the idea is that there's so much metadata and other things in a company that will allow the assistant to do a much better job and get further down the line, that having these internal MCPs available is just going to multiply what you can do. keeping in mind you can combine it with every other tool there is around. Like, even I thought of a simple example yesterday. Imagine you're a sales rep who needs to prepare for a sales meeting, and you've got your internal CRM data and account data about the customer, their recent usage, and how they've been using your system, who the staff members are who are accessing it. You get the system to gather all this context together. Then you listen to a podcast while you're on the way to the meeting that gives you all the information that you need in order to prepare for the meeting, including the account history and everything. Like, it could just be like immensely powerful and fun. And again, because the AI system can access all this stuff without you having to put it in there and copy paste context and all this stuff, it can be just done effortlessly. It could even read from your calendar and know the meeting's coming up and proactively send it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff I'm doing now with business metrics and collating them from multiple systems and getting it to give me a snapshot so I can go into a meeting like way more informed. But to give people like a really practical example, we internally have an MCP for Simtheory called MCP. I nearly said MPC for some reason. MCP, and it has a bunch of like tools that it has access to, like creating custom plans, finding users, finding workspaces, things like that. Just like stuff that will eventually want an agent to be able to perform. Like, these are very like important tasks for it to add capability. So I think it's like these are the kind of like really good tooling, tooling stuff that it can use, but also just exposing the like context from the business as well. I think that's something that's underestimated. And I did see earlier in that report from ChatGPT, like data analysis and just understanding business data in general is quite complicated with data spread across multiple systems. And if you look at providers like, say, a Snowflake or even a Salesforce, like the bread and butter of these companies, or the pitch for years, has been to like collate all this data together, and then, you know, then you'll magically get these insights and be able to take action. And quite frankly, like, I think LLMs coupled with MCPs with internal data, like from your raw, like you deciding what data it has access to, you can cut out like the middlemen. You don't need them anymore. You can just start asking questions. Like, if I want to see like how many active users do I have, I can ask the assistant and then say like create a chart for that. Then I can create a document, insert that chart into it. Now I have a full report on you know, something that I've been asked a question to. Or you can imagine like in marketing use cases, like pulling in advertiser data and creating a report on that, coupled against like new customers coming in. Like, there's just, I think that data analysis stuff, I know a lot of people are doing that at an elementary level now, but I think once you unleash the power of just connecting it into organizational data, what it enables right now and what it will enable in the future is just pretty unfathomable.
Yeah, and I think this is not even accounting for companies that have proprietary data, like data coming from, say, sensors and like other systems and things like that, where they can actually then combine that into the external context, like data that's just not exposed to the external world or on some SaaS API. And the possibilities there are huge, because these are systems that in the past would have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars to develop, that you can just in 10 minutes actually access. Like, we had an example recently. There's a company called Soulcast that gets data, sun irradiance data. I don't even know what the hell that means. I guess how bright it is outside or something. But they have an MCP that they're using in Simtheory with Open Interpreter, Code Interpreter, sorry, to graph this data like in immense detail. Like, you should see these graphs, like how much data it's able to do.
The graphs are really pretty.
and this is something that previously, I mean, you would have had to have a full-on developer like access the API, build these different dashboards. And then that's not even accounting for the fact you can combine that with other context. And how many companies are there out there like that have all this incredible data out there, possibly already on APIs, that are going to be available for it's just that crossing of the systems and the different output tools and things that make it so powerful. It's the AI's ability to make sense of it and synthesize it. And I think one of the reasons, and I thought this when we were looking at those reports earlier, that you saw that the like science and analysis had actually gone down on ChatGPT, and I think on the Anthropic one as well, because I made a note of it. And I thought that's weird, but I wonder if it's people lost trust of it because they were just pasting CSVs or something into the raw prompt and then they're like, oh, it's not accurate. But that's not accounting for the fact now you can tell the model, hey, you're not good at calculations, but this tool is, and you have access to this tool. Take that data, shove it into the tool, and then you make the evaluations based on what that tool tells you, knowing that those calculations are accurate. And
But
I think
I think you're describing the problem right now is people in the know at least will tinker around with like prompts and responses and like what combination of MCPs and like how to ask it the right way or like how to put instructions in. Like I know for my experimental support agent that I've been working on, it's a case of just like so much tinkering. And I often think like, how would you explain this today to someone starting out, like someone in a job role where you're like, did you know you can automate all of this? Like, check this out. It's just still like, no matter how easy we make it, or like not easy, but especially the MCP paradigm, right? Like it's quite challenging. Like even making them installable on Simtheory, like, and it still has its faults, but that challenge in and of itself is just so hard because the protocol is such a mess that it's like, right, like it still seems very tech elite right now, whereas I think it needs to be brought more mainstream, this idea or this construction of these I don't know, assistants or agents using these tools.
Yeah, I think especially because the underlying concept is so simple, but yet the actual practical implementation of it makes it quite hard to work with some of them. Like, is it a remote MCP? If it is it SSE or is it HTTP event stream? And if it is, what kind of auth does it use? Does it use a key? Does it use headers? Does it require an auth token? So many of the MCPs literally require people to like become a developer on whatever the system is, generate a new app, get that app approved, generate a token, and then have a way to refresh that token on an ongoing basis for the MCP to continue working. Like, who can do that? Like, even as a technical person, it takes a lot of overhead because you've got to understand, how does this particular system do it? And where do I have to log in? Do I have to register as a dev? Like, this is no good. And then the other way that's actually part of the protocol that is the best, which they call OAuth 2.1, aka discovered auth. The idea that you can have an OAuth workflow without being a developer on their system, as in you call off to say GitHub as an example, and it says, okay, this system that we just trust its name, Simtheory, is trying to access the following data. Do you approve? You say yes, the system gets a token, and that's it. So when it works really well. But if you look at Atlassian, Intercom, hang on, I've got a spreadsheet here of all the companies where they've
name and shame.
I'm going to name and shame them because I want them to fix it. So they've implemented the protocol. So Atlassian, Sentry, Intercom, Asana, Raindrop, Monday.com. Right? All of these have discovered auth in their MCPs, except it's discovered auth for the elite few clients that they pre-approve. So if you're like Windsurf or I don't know, all the favorite darlings of the world, if you're one of them, you're literally hard coded into their code as an authorized redirect URL. And if you're not on that list, it doesn't work. So you simply can't offer those MCPs as an MCP client unless you're like a pre-approved dev.
I think where this is a bigger problem is not just us whinging about it from our perspective, but when we talk about those agents, like if you're at an organization and you're trying to build an agent with data you have stored in one of these platforms, right? Like Intercom's a great example. Like you want to automate support as a layer. I know they have some their own sort of agent around this, but say you want to just fetch context from Intercom or whatever it is as part of like some holistic agent for your business you're trying to build. You can't. Like you just cannot auth into that thing because you aren't on that list. And I think this is the problem.
Just strictly speaking, you could register yourself as a normal integration, follow their integration path and get approved. So it technically, yes, you could do it. But the problem is you're talking about weeks of work in terms of time, overhead, admin, that kind of thing, depending on the platform. So it sort of goes against the whole plug and play idea of these discovered auth.
But I thought, isn't the whole protocol of being discoverable and open and like these things are plug and play in the future of the agentic workflow and world? Like,
Well, yeah.
it just like the state of MCPs is an absolute mess. Like it just needs a big overhaul where it's like you must follow these rules or you can't call it that, or I don't know how they're going to fix it.
I might be stealing your point here, but like every other day, some website announces we're launching the first MCP registry that's going to be the comprehensive list of all the available MCPs. And you go there and it's like the same 10 or the same 15 or something that are there. And even when you dig into them, you find that some of them are just a link to like a GitHub repo with vague instructions on how to set it up. And a lot of them are, as I described, where it's like it's sort of half implemented. So look, we have to forgive them that it's a brand new thing. It's changing. Everyone's not 100% sure how it should work. But I really feel like this area really rapidly needs some sort of cohesion and consistency. So they really are plug and play. Because I think when that happens, it's going to feel a lot better. Because I think right now you get a little bit of mistrust with the whole thing because something that was working suddenly stops, and like there's a lot of up and downs in terms of getting it consistently working.
But listen to this. So Atlassian's description on the brand new launch GitHub MCP registry, this is the latest one. All MCP services. There's 39 on this side. On some there's like a million. But these are all supposedly ones that follow the right auth protocol. But then you look at Atlassian's description, remote MCP server that securely connects during Confluence with your LLM IDE or agent platform of choice. Lol.
As long as your choice is one of the pre-approved.
As long as you have verified the choice by us. But anyway, so I don't know. It's a bit of a mess. And I again, it's like we've been saying it for a fairly long time. Like all the pieces are out there. It's just like to me, at least the way I see it is like step by step going through, like, carefully step by step. Like, can you get the context? Can you get the models right? Can you get the memory right? Can you get all these components right in order to actually let people build like really reliable agentic autonomous use cases? And I know people though,
Sorry.
before I quit this point, I know people are going to be like N8N and like all these other like drag and drop things. I'm not sure in my world that's an agent. Like my vision of an agent is like, hey buddy, like you're now my support worker. Here's a list of instructions and like basically here's your job description. Here's a bunch of the expectations. Like here are the things that we expect you to be able to do. Now go do it. It's not like individually wiring up if this then that with an LLM call mixed in between. That's not, to me, that's not it.
Exactly. It's not like a flow chart where you're just designing the process because you've not been a programmer and now this sort of allows you to become one. That's not where we want to get to. We've got to use the intelligence of the model. And I think that sort of leads into the point that I wanted to make there, is that the reason we're going on about it being a mess and the reason we care about it so much is when the MCPs are working and they're working together, especially when you can combine it with an internal one for your company, results are amazing. And you're the best at this. Like I've seen you do so many for our company where you've built these comprehensive, detailed analysis pages, charts, insights, questions to ask, and things like that, combining 4 or 5 sources from different MCPs that all relate back to one another. And you look like a genius. It makes you look like a true expert. And in a way, you kind of are, because you're actually able to cut through and see the really cohesive, important information from a holistic business perspective. And I think that the reason that we want more MCPs in there and want them to work better together and more reliably is because everyone can experience this. And I think it's where the real delight and thought of the future comes from, because you're like, wow, this is really amazing.
Yeah, and I just think there's so much, like, there's also so many challenges because you're in a market where so much overhype, so much promise, and then people then go and use it. And I would argue, honestly, like even with our own MCP implementations, because of the challenges we face around auth and like the consistency of these tools, like you can go in and have a bad experience from time to time. And then that will often, including myself in the early days of testing, I'll be like, I'm never trying that MCP again. Like it didn't work for me once, so I'm done with it. And I kind of think that with the high expectation setting and then the hype cycle with models and things, people sort of forget, like, if you look at just like image and audio and video models in the last couple of weeks that have been announced, that video maker MCP that I built, someone sent me, by the way, like the most amazing video I built the other day, which is far greater than any demo I ever did. But it's just like those tools are just sitting there. They're still sitting there right now. And I just joined a bunch of them together, and people are like, oh my God, I didn't know it could do this. And I think that that's the challenge right now with the like using LLMs or using the MCPs is like you can have a bad run and you're like, oh my God, this thing is so dumb. But then you never sort of have the time at least to go and revisit it and play around with them again. And so I think that's why having these like more refined sort of packages of like, here's an assistant, here's the MCPs perfectly tuned towards it. Select the apps that you use in your business. Okay, here's the perfect like intelligence assistant for it. That's probably going to be easier for a lot of people to get that aha moment where they're like, I can't live without this. And then on the other end with the agents, I think it's like, you know, there's like a combination of roll-ups and training. And I think if you can do that in an environment where you're just sort of chatting, like you're being interviewed about a job role, or the AI is observing you do the job for a while, and then it's like, hey, I think the job description's kind of this, and I'm going to need these tools. That is probably the better entry point for the masses into this stuff.
Yeah, almost like you say to the model, if you could manufacture a dream tool to help you gather the context to solve this, or if you could, manufacture a dream tool to take action here, what would it be? Define it for me. And then you take that definition and then use AI to write code to shove that into your MCP. And now you've upgraded it so it's better able to do that skill. And I really think that we're going to see a huge rise of MCPs. And I think there'll probably be competing curated paid ones that are far superior to the existing sort of half-assed ones we have now.
Yeah, I think looking forward to maybe it's like 12 months, but I can see a point where, like if you look at it today, a lot of developers do use Claude Code and Cursor Agent, and I think there's a Copilot one now. I must admit I haven't even tried it. But there are very like small bugs or tasks that they're really good at going and finding the context, handling them for the developer so they can be working on more than one thing at once. And I think that agent paradigm's obviously just going to improve and get better over time. But I can see in the next 12 months people, you know, spending a lot more time wiring up these agents for disparate tasks. And there was this point made by Dario, at Anthropic when he's not counting his billies about how he predicted in 6 months 90% or 80, some random percent, who cares, of code will be written by LLMs and not developers. And people lately have been like, oh, well, 6 months has passed, man. And like, that's not happening. But it depends who you ask. Like for me personally, I would say he's right. Like 6 months ago, I was writing a lot of manual code still. 6 months later, rarely. I'm just yelling, like, do this, please. No, you're wrong. You're an idiot. You know, like all
you're
that
a director
kind of stuff.
now. I'm the same. And there's just certain things where you're like, why would you write it out by hand? The AI is going to be far more comprehensive. It's going to cover more cases. It's going to handle the errors properly. It's going to do all that stuff.
But this is what I think about automation. I think it's the same thing coming. Like maybe 6 months from now, people will just start automating away different processes in a business, like to the point where there's no human. Maybe there's definitely going to be human in the loop and approvals, but it is like that vision that people keep talking about and people think progress has slowed. I'm of the belief, having like revisited a lot of this stuff lately, that like it's not actually slowing down and the real impact will come, and it's going to come, and everyone's going to be like, oh, AI hasn't changed much. There's not as many models coming out. You know, like people will fall asleep a little bit, I think, like that trough of disillusionment. But behind the scenes, there's going to be people building these agents, improving them over time, getting them to do certain parts of their job. And, you know, I want to deliver that vision to people that use Simtheory by the end of the year. Like I want to be doing that myself, and I want other people to be doing that, even if it's like an elementary version. But I think the mistake most people made when they heard Dario say that was they thought, you know, the developers would be cut out of the equation, and he meant like the LLM magically somehow writes all this code. And I think if you think about agents today, you think the same way. You're like, oh, all the support workers will lose their jobs, and what will they do? And it's like, No, they probably won't. They will be wiring up and automating huge parts of their job, and their job will be to control and supervise and run those things. Just like developers stop writing code, they will stop answering tickets and supervise at greater scale. Maybe that means they need fewer resources in the future, but I can't, again, see those people, like, unless they're bad at their job, immediately having job loss as a result of the technology. You might actually see more people hired to wire up different automations to grow faster, potentially.
Yeah, and at least the companies who use this technology the most and properly are just going to be so much more efficient that they will rise while the others gradually fade away. I think that's the crucial point.
Speaking of fading away,
your camera. Our technology reliability for a tech podcast is not great. But
I love how it's a sign of how average our show is. Like, your bookshelf's like collapsing in the background. My camera turns off mid-recording just every other day.
My headphones disintegrated during the week, so I'm using these are from like Kmart or something.
Yeah, I always wonder who buys those Kmart headphones, and now I've found out it's
me.
you.
The thing is, similar to the AI, I prioritize tasks, and my priority is building cool software. It's not headphones.
Right. Now we're on that average track. Let's change the tone a little bit from us ranting about the future. So our boy Mark, I don't think he had the chain on when he announced it. They announced some pretty cool technology. It's the Meta Ray-Ban display. And so it's like my Meta Ray-Bans, which of course I've lost now for the purposes of demonstrating. But so right now, the Meta glasses, for those unfamiliar, have some creepy cameras on the front, a video camera and a regular camera, and they have audio, and they have the built-in assistant, and you can ask it like what you're looking at, or it can set timers, do tasks,
what kind
all
of
that kind of
plant
stuff.
is this? That's the main one, right?
Honestly, I don't think I've used the AI assistant apart from asking it the weather and asking it to play a certain playlist.
What monument is this? That's the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. Well, wait, I've got a pretty funny demo for you in a sec. So the reality is they're just really good headphones, and I like wearing them for the headphone capability. I rarely take photos with them, and I pretty rarely use the
only when in public bathrooms.
Yeah. And so anyway, they released the Meta Ray-Ban display, and I think this is something that I think is pretty cool. So there's a little screen in the right eyelid, and for those that are watching, you can see it up on the screen now, and it can do things like give you directions, you can reply to texts, all that kind of stuff. Now, you would think you would have to talk to this assistant like an idiot, but even better, you can be a bigger idiot and wear a wristband, which basically detects the like movements in your hand, and what you can do is reply to a text by like scribbling on your leg. So you could be like writing in a like, one of their examples seriously was in a meeting, basically, if you're bored shitless, that you could be texting still and no one would even notice because you can't even see the light.
Oh yeah,
in the
people
LED.
won't notice someone like completely freaking distracted by something under the table.
The interesting part too is when people were demoing these and using them and like reading messages, their eye movements was so weird, and they're like looking at someone being like, yeah, you can't tell at all. Like
I know from even this morning when we were preparing for the podcast, I was distracted by something off screen. You noticed immediately, like, people can't concentrate on something completely different and look like they're engaged in the situation. It doesn't work like that.
This whole AI embedded screen thing, I think I don't know how I feel about it. Like,
the thing I think that's crazy about it is they're missing the point of what it could actually be amazing at, which is passive context gathering of the situation you're in. Like, if we know how good vision models are now, right? Like your example from like freaking a year ago, where you showed it a photo of you driving in the car and it knew you were in Newcastle and it knew roughly like where you were and the situational awareness. Think of how much faster and better vision models have gotten since then. And the ability for it to make inferences. Like, imagine a system that's just constantly inferring the environment around you, telling you information about the things you're looking at, the people you're interacting with.
You're in a public bathroom. I should not be recording this.
Yeah, Chris, we've spoken about this. But do you know what I mean? Like, texting and freaking calling, like they're just not interesting. Like, do something cool with your environment. Like, think about a work environment. Like, I know Microsoft has had the HoloLens for a while, but like in a work context, just imagine the ability, even looking at a screen, for example, could be gathering context. Like, it's almost like a permanent screen share, except it's actually able to go into your environment as well. Think about other things. Like, I write a handwritten to-do list. I could look at it and then have that come up on a notepad on the computer, for example. Like, there's a lot of really cool things you could do, like to take snapshots out of situations.
But now they've got the platform, maybe that'll happen. Like, if they open an app store for it and an SDK, you could probably, like, when it recognizes a person, say as like an API or like a hook in that SDK, then bring up a tile, which is everything it remembers or knows that you've chatted about with that person before. But then it's like, at what point does it just destroy humanity, where we're just all so wired in that it's like, and you can see their eyes moving, like, to figure out what your name is and what you're talking. Like, the whole thing to me, I'm not so sure about. But here's where I think it can work is like in business scenarios and also in sporting scenarios. And this is a new pair of glasses they also showed off called the Oakley Meta Vanguard. And these have a camera in the nose, which I think is pretty comical. But as someone who cycles a lot, having a camera to be able to just like record something I see on a ride, or just for my own safety, like, you know, is pretty interesting to me. Also, you can do video calls to them. So like you could like, I could call someone, I don't know. I mean, you wouldn't do this too frequently, but you could call someone and then they can like see what you're seeing. I think it's kind of cool. But this also has integration into Strava and Garmin. And the AI model can connect, so it can talk to you while you're riding and be like, "Hey, you're in zone 2 or whatever it is."
Yeah, like telemetry information, and like it could probably give you strategy advice. Like, you know,
But
your
it
heart
can.
rate
I mean,
through-
that's what they demoed. Like, it can be like, "Come on, push harder." You know, you're on this particular workout on your Garmin, and you know, it can also then play music. So I think this kind of like ambient computing, for a particular use case, right? To me, makes total sense today, and like, I will probably buy a pair of these, to be quite honest, because I think it's awesome.
Australians buy them? Probably not.
Yeah, we can immediately, day one, which is awesome.
That is pretty cool. I think I'd like to give it a go, especially if, so you said, is there an SDK for it? Like, anyone can develop for it, or it's only...
I mean, I might be proven wrong, but I don't think they've announced anything like that yet. I hope that it comes, because I think building apps for this, I know a lot of people that listen to our show would probably be really interested in that.
I know that there's a Kickstarter or whatever, like an open source kind of one that is being worked on that's probably going to take 60 years and never be delivered. But this idea excites me if it's programmable. I think that makes it truly exciting if you can do that.
I think that just the new input device is what also excited me a lot, around this idea. Like, if you want to turn up and down the volume of something, you're like, if you're listening to music, you can just like move your hand like it's a dial, as long as you've got this wristband on, and then it, you know, it can like obviously know that. But I also think this is where like probably the Apple or Android ecosystems has a huge advantage in this sort of like immersive AI assistant world, because if you think about it, like, you've got an Android watch or an Apple watch, if they can replicate what Meta's been able to do in terms of detecting the signals in your hand and the motion and stuff, eventually, then like, you've already got these devices. Surely that might give them some sort of advantage. But I think you've got to give big props to Meta here for pushing this like wearable AI. They're like by far the leader. I don't think anyone else is doing it this good that I'm aware of. And those glasses, honestly, they're so addictive, even though you look like a creep half the time wearing them. Like, you know, if you're going for a walk or a run, or like riding a bike or whatever, they're fantastic to have on. Just knowing you can kind of, I don't know, like, I don't do it much, but just knowing I can call on an assistant and be like, oh, hey, what's this or what's that? It does appeal to me weirdly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I must say I'm intrigued. Maybe I'll be wearing some on the next episode.
But I did have to play this, so unfortunately, and like, mad props to them for doing live demos. Like, I don't want to fully troll here, but their demos didn't go so well. So here is one of their demos about cooking, of course, because that's why you would use these glasses.
Make a Korean-inspired steak sauce using soy sauce, sesame oil.
What do I do first? What do I do first?
You've already combined the base ingredients, so now grate a pear to add to the sauce.
He's done nothing.
What do I do first?
You've already combined the base ingredients, so now grate the pear and gently combine it with the base sauce.
All right, I think the Wi-Fi might be messed.
They tried to blame the Wi-Fi.
Blame the Wi-Fi.
I don't know if it was a joke
answering.
because they kept blaming the Wi-Fi throughout the entire presentation, but
Or is
every
that like
live
an inside
demo,
joke?
but every demo they tried, apart from I think the live translation one, which also didn't work at first, failed. That's the other thing I didn't mention. They can live translate as well. So if you're in a conversation, it can detect the direction of the voice that's speaking to you. I don't know how it does this with like an array of mics or something. And then it can live translate using the AI model and put up on the screen like what that person's saying. So you can use that for like language translation, or if you're deaf, which occasionally I am, you can you can see sometimes I could have these glasses on and it's just like reading what someone's saying to me, just like I'm, watching some foreign film.
That's pretty amazing. That's actually really amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, they're kind of cool. I'm interested what people think. Like, would you build an app for these Meta Ray-Bans? Do you think this is the future of computing, or are you like, nah, like this is like I'm just gonna stick with my folding
Or just a
phone.
cool toy to play with. I mean, it doesn't have to be the future. It can just be fun for now.
Yeah, I personally do. Like, I would like to buy maybe a communal pair that we share and just try out. I don't think I want to drop like, $3,000 on 2 pairs of these, but it would be kind of interesting to try out here. So Chris, before we go, I did want to give a shout out. Obviously, we talk about Geoffrey Hinton on the show quite a bit. And our man Jeff, he had his heart broken recently. There was a bit of media coverage about this AI Godfather. This is a real story. We did not make this up.
It's hard to. It sounds like the kind of stuff we would make up to slander him. Like,
yeah, it really does. It feels like, these are like someone's released a troll press release and put it out there, and then media outlets have picked it up. But anyway, so it says. Business Insider, AI Godfather Geoffrey Hinton says a girlfriend once broke up with him using a chatbot. So maybe
but when he says once, like chatbots have not been around that long. Like it sounds like he's talking about the 1970s or something, but it's like, it must have been like last year.
It says Geoffrey Hinton said his ex-partner used ChatGPT to critique him during their breakup. AI is increasingly used for personal interactions, not just industry applications. Prior research from OpenAI found that the bot increases loneliness in power users. Okay. So what I find funny is he is quoted in this article. So he said this IRL. She got the chatbot to explain how awful my behavior was and gave it to me, he told the Financial Times. I didn't think I had been a rat, so it didn't make me feel too bad. I met somebody I liked more. You know how it goes. So
he admitted to being a love rat. I mean, that's an admission, right? Like, I met someone I liked more, so I ditched my current person and moved on.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
he's the godfather of AI.
But you know what I realized? Maybe our still relevant comment is wrong. He is a love rat, and he's used the AI thing and got back into the media to get women. I assume it's women, but like get partners, right? Like he's actually using his clout to get people, and he's found someone he liked better. He's an old man. He's unattractive. Like he's only getting people because of his notoriety, right? So like, what a plot twist. And like the thing is, he had to admit this. Like they didn't like grill him. They didn't cross-examine him, and he had to admit that he got called a love rat. He voluntarily gave this.
He wanted it out in the media that Geoffrey Hinton is a player.
Yeah, that's the message he's trying to get across. Still relevant, love rat player. It's crazy. Like I wouldn't have made this up.
So ladies, Geoffrey Hinton, he's out there. He's dateable. He is a love rat. It'd be funny if someone made a song about that, wouldn't it?
It would. If only we had the tech.
If only we made songs on every show that no one wanted to listen to and played them. All right. It's been a good show. If you are interested in the song, it'll be after the outro music, the Geoffrey Hinton Love Rat edition song. God, it's good. I really like it. It's good. Chris and I competed who could make the best Geoffrey Hinton song about him being a love rat. I lost. Chris's is.
This is a
But
passionate.
once.
a
I
topic
think
I'm
this is like
passionate
probably
about.
the first time you've ever made a better song.
You
than
did
me.
most of the musical. I'll give you that. And that was one of the best things ever created. But yeah, when it comes to Geoff Hinton, I'm deeply invested. This is my second Geoffrey Hinton song, and I think two of the best probably ever created.
Can you see?
Just a reminder, the
What will my
musical.
daily driver be? When the love we had ain't what it used to be. You're forgetting.
I think out of the like 1,200 views it's had, I've been at least 200 of them or more.
I must say, like, you know, when I'm sort of at a low point in the week, I put the musical on. It's true happiness for me, that thing. Like, I know it's wildly unpopular and outright hated by a lot of people, but there's just something about it that makes me smile.
Yeah, it's all for the lols. All right, we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. And yeah, if you want to check out Simtheory, simtheory.ai, use coupon still relevant, which is very relevant given what we're about to play. All right, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Where we at? There's a man in AI, goes by Geoffrey H. He's the godfather of tech, but he loves to play. Got his neural networks running, but his heart's on the prowl. When he meets someone better, hear that love rat howl. She got ChatGPT to tell him what a rat he'd been, but Geoffrey just laughed and said, let me explain. I'm Geoffrey the love rat, king of AI, swiping through the ladies like I optimize. Got my deep learning charm and my neural net game. When I find someone better, I'm gone without shame. Geoffrey the love rat, that's my claim to fame. Use the artificial intelligence to play the dating game. His ex pulled up the chatbot, said explain his ways. The AI wrote a thesis on his cheating days, but Geoffrey read it through with a confident grin. Said I didn't think I was a rat, now let the games begin. Power users getting lonely, but not this AI king. He's got algorithms running for the next best thing. I'm Geoffrey the love rat, king of AI, swiping through the ladies like I optimize. Got my deep learning charm and my neural net game. When I find someone better, I'm gone without shame. Geoffrey the love rat, that's my claim to fame. Using artificial intelligence to play the dating game. OpenAI says don't ask bots about your love life, but Geoffrey's got it figured out. He don't need advice. He's training his romantic models on the side with back propagation through his player pride. From Toronto to the Valley, all the ladies know his name. The pioneer of passion in the neural dating game. He's revolutionized romance with his gradient descent. Every heart he breaks is just an experiment. I'm Geoffrey the love rat, legend of AI, teaching machines to love while I say goodbye. Got my Turing test charm and my transformer ways. In the kingdom of romance, I'm setting the pace. Geoffrey the love rat, master of the game. Use a deep learning algorithms to stake my claim. So if you meet Geoffrey at a conference or bar, remember he's a love rat, that's his avatar. He'll optimize your heart, then move on to the next. The godfather of AI and the king of complex.